Should I have paid $40 for this set and driven an hour to get them? Probably not. Did I do it anyway? Absolutely. I was pretty confident that I could flip these for a profit, so follow along if you want to see step by step exactly what I do and how much I make. My first step was to remove the handles, but there was no actual screw for the handles. There were 4 screws that were holding that very front of the drawer on. And if you find this, all you need to do is remove those screws, and usually the front will just tap off. It'll be nailed in place. Once all of the handles were removed, I went around and gave the 2 pieces a thorough clean. I used my vacuum cleaner first to get rid of all the cobwebs, dust, extra bits and pieces that like to hang around in those drawer runners. Then gave everything a spray over with crud cutter, wiped it down, and then came around with just some plain hot water to remove any of the residue that might be sitting on the surface from that cleaning product. I personally love the contrast between a timber and a painted surface. So for this set, I wanted to keep the top natural, balance it out by keeping the feet natural as well, and then have a painted body and the drawers painted as well. So to cut down on my sanding time, I used my carbide scraper or tungsten carbide blade to remove the finish off the top so that I could just come through quickly with 120 grit sandpaper to get this back to raw timber. Once I'd removed all of the existing finish, I went up to 180 grit followed by 240 grit sandpaper, and I didn't go any higher with my sander. Everything that I do from now sanding wise will be by hand. I absolutely loathe having to drill new handle holes. It gives me anxiety having to get the measurements exactly right. So the easiest way that I have found is to use a handle template. This is the Caboodle handle template. It's available from Bunnings in Australia, but you can get them online on Amazon. You can see here that I'm just using a tiny weeny little drill bit, and that's going to mark out some pilot holes. What I'm doing here is actually lining the template up with the existing handle holes. I then put the new handle onto the template, and I'm marking out where those holes are going to be. These templates have standard handle sizes on them. You don't want to go all the way through with this tiny drill bit. All you want to do is give yourself a guide for later on so that you can come back after you've painted and drill some larger holes. I used builder's bog in the holes that I wasn't going to be using, and while that was drying, I went around and hand sanded the finish off the 4 little legs on each of the pieces. It was then time to give everything a good scuff sand. Now, scuff sanding is essentially creating a key so that your primer will adhere to the surface effectively. I went around by hand with 240 grit sandpaper and a sanding sponge on the body of the piece, and went around with my orbital sander and 240 grit to smooth down where I had filled those existing handle holes. Before I apply any paint or primer onto my pieces, I always like to do a test patch, which is a good habit to get into if you are thinking about using a spray gun. I always like to make sure that my dilution is correct, that I'm spraying in the right temperature, and that the pressure that I have my gun set to and the product output are all working together to give me that beautiful fine factory smooth finish. Because I'm going mid-toned with this set, I went in with a water-based primer. This is the Zinza water-based primer that you can get from Bunnings in Australia. It's the blue can. It's beautiful to apply. You don't need a lot of dilution with it, and it dries within an hour. When it was dry, I went around with 600 grit sandpaper just lightly to make sure that I got rid of any dust or debris that may have landed in the paintwork when it was drying. This can be a little bit controversial in the furniture flipping world because there are so many paint brands out there that are designed specifically for furniture, but I always use a water-based enamel paint, so a house paint, but it's the trim paint. So the enamel paint that would normally go on architraves, door frames, things like that. I use it for 2 main reasons. One being that it's very easy to apply in a spray gun, it's easy cleanup, and it doesn't need a top coat. Top coating on a water-based enamel is an added extra step that you can do, but it's not actually essential. And that's coming from my uncle, who is a professional painter. When I queried him about top coating water-based enamel, he sort of laughed at me and said it's unnecessary. You don't actually need to do it because it's designed for those high traffic areas that are going to be getting scuffed up all the time, a lot more than what furniture would be. To keep the top of these 2 pieces looking like freshly sanded beige timber, I actually had to apply a green-based paint wash to cut out a little bit of that gold, almost salmony pink that was coming through from the hardwood. I did 2 coats of that paint wash, which I will include on my cheat sheet in my raw timber furniture flipping guide, which you can find through the link in my bio. I sanded in between with 600 grit sandpaper once it was completely dry, and did a total of 2 coats. My final steps on this flip were to install install the new handles and to seal the raw timber tops. I chose FIDDES Supreme Wax Polish in the color Light for this set for a couple of reasons. I like that the wax will actually sit in any grain that is present on the timber and dry to a lighter overall look. And I also like the fact that it can be buffed out to a beautiful sheen level. So you can see here it looks quite matte. That's when it's first applied. But once it's dry, you can see I'm buffing it out with just an old rag and I'm getting that beautiful sheen level. So you've got a couple of products in one with it. If you want that raw timber look, you've got it. If you want that higher sheen level like this, then you've got it too. So guys, just a reminder of where we were, and this is where we are now. It's a modern soft color palette. It's giving calm, serene vibes, perfect for a bedroom. It just goes to show that you shouldn't sleep on veneer furniture. I know it's not solid, but you can still do things with it if it's in good condition. It took me around 4 hours of hands-on work time, plus that initial hour of pickup time. I listed them for $380 and I have a buyer coming on the weekend. I will not count my chickens before they're hatched though, so I will confirm once they're actually sold. But I'd love to know what you guys think in the comments, so jump on in, let me know, is it a nail or a fail?